Hello friend. I want to tell you about the car Toyota Avensis was available as a sedan, hatchback and station wagon. The sedan and station wagon have 520L of luggage space, while the liftback offers 10L less. The interiors are also spacious. Both the front and the back can accommodate adults. The build quality is typical of the Toyota brand and models of this period. Lots of plastic imitating wood and aluminum mixed with leather in richer versions. The materials don't stand the test of time very well. On longer distances, the front seats are not very comfortable. The Avensis is pleasant and comfortable to drive. The car has no sporting aspirations and doesn't even have the right engines for them. However, the well-maintained chassis guides it confidently on the road even at high speeds and in difficult weather conditions. The Avensis design doesn't hide any surprises, apart from direct injection in some engines. This is a typical front-wheel drive car, suspended on McPherson struts and a multi-link rear axle. Unfortunately, the Japanese have gone a bit overboard on the rear axle with the number of elements, especially rubber ones. The power steering is electro-hydraulic. The choice of engine versions was not large, and Toyota in Europe focused mainly on the then fashionable diesels. The diesel offer consisted of 2-liter units from the D4D family with 116 HP and after the facelift 126 HP, and from 2005 two larger 2.2 D4D with 150 HP and 177 HP. The petrol engines are the basic 1.6 VVTi with 110 HP and the complementary 1.8 VVTi with 129 HP. Both of these units have multi-point injection. On the other hand, the 2.0 D4 VVTi, 147 HP, and its relative with a capacity of 2.4 L, 163 HP, are designs with direct petrol injection. The larger engine was only combined with an automatic gearbox. The petrol engines were paired with 5-speed manual transmissions. The 1.8 and 2.0 engines also had 4-speed automatics. The 5-speed automatic went to the 2.4 engine and was its only transmission. The diesels had a 5-speed manual before the facelift and a 6-speed after it. Which engine to choose? The 1.6 and 1.8 petrol engines are related, although they are not identical designs. Especially from an operational point of view. While the 1.6 engine has only one drawback, which is relatively low power, the 1.8 engine had an oil problem. And a significant one at that. Toyota claimed to have solved it in 2006, but in fact it was still being fought in newer models. Now we have to look at it completely differently. It's been a dozen or so years since these problems appeared and either these engines have been repaired, replaced or they're simply gone. Of course you have to be careful when buying a car with 1.8, but these days it's not a big problem. The rule is simple. If you find a bottle of oil in the trunk or the engine oil level is lower than it should be, it is better to give up and look for another model with this engine. Especially since this engine is the most advantageous among petrol engines. Fuel consumption, approximately 8L 100 kilometers, is practically the same as in the case of 1.6, and dynamics are noticeably better. This engine is suitable for the installation of autogas systems, which many owners of these cars do. However, it is worth knowing that the valve clearance adjustment is not hydraulic or screw-based. In practice, it is impossible, because there are so-called glasses in the system. And although the valve clearance is maintained in the right range for a long time, in engines operated on gas for a long time there may be a problem with it. Both of these engines have a timing chain that should last at least 300,000 kilometers. It usually does, but it sometimes makes noise earlier. The 2.0 and 2.4 petrol engines marked as D4 also have a timing chain, at a similar price, which in my opinion are currently a proposition for the brave. These are successful units, but with direct petrol injection, which can cause problems after a dozen or so years. In my opinion, if the car has a small, documented mileage, below 200,000 kilometers, it is worth buying one. Despite the higher power, the 2.0 engine burns slightly more than the 1.8. The larger, related 2.4 encourages dynamic driving and users report that on average it needs about 10L 100 kilometers. The problem here is the lack of possibility of installing an autogas system to reduce costs, and in addition the need to refuel with more expensive E5 petrol. It is best to refuel these engines with proven fuels, especially with very low ETBE, MTBE and olefin content. Although the system is generally durable, the injectors do not like deposits, and these are formed when the petrol contains artificial substitutes instead of real ethanol of good quality. In general, engines from the D4 family reward you with long and fairly economical operation, but only if you keep them in very good condition. With the right driving technique, a 2.0 engine can burn less petrol than a 1.8. You should fill up with good fuel and clean the intake from time to time. You often have to change the oil, because it happens that petrol gets into it. However, the only really reliable choice in the Avensis is the 1.6. The 1.8 is a bigger risk, and I would only buy the 2.0 or 2.4 if the car is in excellent condition, has a clear service history and low mileage. The real hit in the Avensis was the diesel engines. Let's start with the smaller ones, with a capacity of 2.0L. The early version, designated 1CD and with 116 horsepower, is a very durable and economical unit, but with frequently breaking equipment. The injectors and turbochargers had and still have low durability. In my opinion, this is mainly due to the use of substitutes, turbochargers, and used parts, Denso injectors. A few years ago and before, it was not possible to regenerate Denso injectors, and new ones cost a fortune, so the engine was repaired with used parts. In turn, turbochargers were replaced incorrectly, i.e. without checking the cause of the fault and without cleaning the entire intake and oil system. Turbocharger replacement, correct repair technology. Apart from the accessories, the 1CD engine is almost armored. Only gross negligence or improperly performed repairs can kill it. The engine has a cast iron block and a timing belt, which should be replaced every 100,000 kilometers. The water pump must be replaced. The facelift brought significant changes in the form of a completely new engine marked 1AD, which turned out to be a faulty design and additionally equipped with a DPF filter. Due to damage to the head gasket, the engine was often replaced under warranty, but if someone did not drive much, they later paid for this defect from their own money. Diesel repair in this area is problematic because it requires dismantling many elements, and if it is to be done professionally and for many years, it is not cheap. That is why many users made these engines by the piece and sold them. Because of this, the unit is considered one of the worst diesels installed in Toyotas. Toyota Avensis II is considered the most problematic Toyota model of the 21st century, but mainly because of diesels. In the right version, it's a great car. Copyright Press Materials, Toyota. Those who had no problems with this engine, exceptions, were happy. Although the equipment broke down incomparably less often than in the 1CD, the aluminum construction is very delicate and not very resistant to temperature changes, so you have to take care of the cooling system. You don't have to worry about the timing chain, though the chain is practically indestructible. The newer engine burns exactly the same amount of fuel as the older one, approximately 6L 100 kilometers, but meets the higher Euro 4 emission standard. Unfortunately, the 2.2D 4D engine, which is almost a twin, has exactly the same problems. However, it is even worse here, because the 177 HP variant also had a problem with the block and oil consumption. Here, however, the principle is similar to that which applies to the 1.8 petrol engine. If the 1AD diesel is still running in the Avensis, and has a significant mileage of around 200 to 250,000 kilometers, it means that it will still be running. It may have been an exceptional example, or it may have been replaced under warranty or repaired. Although it sounds a bit like a paradox, the higher the mileage of a Toyota diesel, the potentially lower the risk of failure resulting from design defects. It is a good idea to look for such a car from the end of production, but with a mileage of around 300,000 kilometers. If you prefer a less worn model, it is better to focus on either a petrol or an early diesel engine, and in case of problems with the injection system, it can be regenerated and the turbocharger replaced in accordance with technology. Toyota Avensis, what's breaking? Currently, the biggest problem with this model is corrosion. Not so much the bodywork, which if there is no accident history, somehow holds together, but the chassis. It can rust completely. If the car was kept in a garage or previously secured, it is worth 2 to 3 times more than the average copy. Unfortunately, it happens that the Avensis not only has advanced corrosion of the chassis, but is not even suitable, leaving aside the economic aspect, for repair. A sensitive area is the air conditioning system. Compressor failures are quite frequent. The clogging of the drain causes water to get on the driver's mat, which in practice ends after a few years with severe corrosion of the floor in this place. Water can also get into the cabin through a corroded windshield frame. When looking at an interesting model, it is also worth looking under the boot floor from the inside. Water can collect there, which means corrosion. If it is present, then in winter you will have a small aquarium under the floor. Other visual complaints include severely dull headlights and water in the rear lights. The reflectors in the headlights also look bad after years. For this reason, the lighting is exceptionally poor. It can be regenerated, but installing new ones will give a much better effect. Headlights age quickly. If they are not regenerated, the driver sees little at night. It's worse when the lamps are xenon, although these have a problem mainly with the lenses. Replacing such lamps is much more expensive because it's hard to find a replacement. Even used ones cost more than a new pair of halogen ones. Therefore, when buying this model, it's better to avoid versions with xenon. An annoying problem for many Avensis is the noise, squeaking, from inside the dashboard. The cause is the flaps controlling the airflow, which are constantly moving and cannot find their proper position. To fix this, you need to get to the position sensor and correct the paths. And here's the good news. You don't have to remove the entire dashboard, which is always a backbreaking task. You can do it through the passenger glove compartment. It's best if it's done by an experienced person who has done this before. Now let's move on to the suspension, which is usually quite expensive to repair, not because of the cost of parts, but because of the amount of work involved. The mechanic often has to deal with the effects of corrosion. When replacing anything with brakes, you should expect to replace or recondition the calipers. Due to corrosion and years of neglect, they often no longer work properly. Problems will arise when repairing the rear axle, which is equipped with many elements that can generate play. After each repair in this area, remember to adjust the geometry. Unfortunately, the car is so sensitive that adjustment, or at least checking the suspension geometry, should be a service activity like changing the oil once a year is the minimum. Problems are to be expected in manual gearboxes, where the bearings or fifth gear gears do not hold up. Only after the facelift were more durable elements used. There are no problems with automatics. Of course, after a greater mileage in the car, the gearbox could have already been repaired. Another drive system problem is a cracked left half shaft. The cause here is similar to the problems in Honda Accords. A corrosion center is created under the weight muffler placed on the half shaft, which weakens the shaft. If the driver is not bothered by vibrations on the steering wheel, or the mechanic is unable to determine the cause, he continues driving until the half shaft breaks. The Avensis electrics are quite unreliable for a Japanese car. The indicator lights on the dashboard are annoying, informing about a brake system failure, ABS and VSC. The cause here may be twofold. On the one hand, it may concern the ABS controller, which needs to be checked by an electrician. Wires often break. But the VSC warning light also means problems with the control or engine operation, something like a check engine. It often occurs in cars with LPG installations, for example. Automatics are gearboxes that do not cause problems in Avensis. Although I have listed many of the model's faults here, and these are only the typical faults, in everyday use it is an above-average car with few failures and durability. Certainly not as much as its predecessor, and interestingly, also not as much as its successor. That is why many people are convinced, and rightly so, that Avensis II is the least refined generation. The opinions of users of the Autocentrum.pl website are also the lowest in the case of this generation. Maybe that's why the model's prices have dropped significantly. In my opinion, this is a car worth considering, but I would only focus on well-maintained examples. It's better to skip the cheapest ones. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.